Welcome back to Leeds Lately for another video. Before we get into this one, if you could just hit that big red button down below. People will tell me it's not red, but the YouTube button's red in general, so click it. We're trying to get to 10k. Anyway, the other thing is, this is obviously last season's away kit, but this season's away kit is available now on the shop, along with anything else that you want to buy from the Leeds United shop. If you use my link in the description down below or in the cards up there, I will get a small kickback at no extra cost to you, and it's a great way for you to support the channel, buying something you were going to buy anyway. Now, we're going to kind of do our... It's almost a bit of a yearly occurrence now, and we've done it for managers who actually haven't ended up being a manager at Leeds United, such as Andoni Iraola and stuff like that. But we're going to do a Tactics Explained video. Of course, you've already had a FARKES Tactics Explained video from me, but that was when he came in. And this is going to be a bit of an updated version for the Premier League because there's going to be a few key differences. One thing I will say is I'll go quickly kind of through what we've seen already from Daniel Farke and what we kind of know about the way that he likes to play through his tactics. And then we're going to talk about the key differences and what I think is going to change slightly in the Premier League. So let's have a little look at the tactics board, which you should see in all its glory there. We've split the pitch up into thirds. So, of course, you've got the middle third between these two, and then you've got the final third at either end. And then also we like to have the lines here for the half spaces. It kind of gives you an idea of what I'm talking about when I'm saying a winger's drifting into the half space. This is exactly what I mean. This is the area in between a fullback and a centre back here, essentially. So now that we've sorted that, we can move on to what the system actually looks like. Now, the key principles of the system are trying to get as many players forward in the attack as possible and trying to dominate possession. That's something we did really well in the Championship. One of the kind of key things that Daniel Farke likes to do is get his fullbacks forward. So a lot of the time last season, you'd have seen this might be Solomon and this might be Nonto, James, whoever it might be. Those forwards would drift into those areas and you would actually have your fullbacks going out wide as well. Not necessarily always, there's not always necessarily 5 of them in the attack like that. Sometimes one would drop back slightly and this kind of number 10 role here would drift in between the lines to try and create things there. The other thing that kind of signified a Daniel Farke formation in general was having these kind of 2 holding midfielders and a number 10 in front who's supposed to kind of have a little bit of a free role almost to help out these attackers in these positions to try to help break down low blocks whilst you've got a solid defense of, for example, Gruevan Tanaka last season is one example of the kind of setup that we would have had there. This season, there are going to be a few key differences. First of all, I think based on what we've seen from pre-season and based on the signings that we've made, to me, it does seem like we're going to go for a 4-3-3, which is a slight adaptation from the 4-2-3-1. So if you look at the 4-2-3-1, it's a little bit more like this. The 4-3-3, all it does is pull this number 10, which would now be a number 8, back into the midfield, and it moves the wingers a bit further up as well to create a 4-3-3. Now, there's a few reasons why Daniel Farke is going to do this for the Premier League. Number one, it provides a lot more stability. If you imagine that your number 10 is up here all the time, and let's say that it's Mecha and he loses the ball to Van Dijk. Van Dijk plays the ball into McAllister here. Instantly, the number 10 is out of the game, and you've got a situation where your midfield is outnumbered, and we found a lot of the times in the past that we could be outnumbered against maybe Leicester in the first season. They like to pack that midfield, and we got a little bit outnumbered because somebody like Jorginho Rutter wasn't a natural midfielder to kind of drop in and play that role. So what's interesting to me is that we don't look like we've gone anywhere near buying a number 10 yet. And even if we do sign someone like Bilal El-Khannouss, I personally believe that he has the option of playing him as a number 10, but would probably primarily use him as a winger. So for me, the key difference here is that you are provided a lot more stability here by having the number 8 a little bit further back. So let's say that it's Sean Longstaff and you've got the 3 in midfield here, and he plays the ball in here to the winger, and the winger is tackled. Once the winger is tackled, you're looking at a bit of a situation where the ball is played into McAllister, but you actually do have this time a midfielder back in Sean Longstaff to try to cover off and be the first point of contact for that attacker coming back at Leeds. What that allows us to do is have these two midfielders to hold their position. So let's say it's Stack and Ampadu, which is a very realistic kind of lineup here. Let's say Stack and Ampadu come into this midfield here, and they're able to mark the space. They're able to mark the channels zonally. Somebody like Stack will be able to come in here to kind of block that passing lane so that if this player tries to play it to the winger along the ground, he's going to be there to stop that. And then you've also got Ampadu, if it was on this side, who would probably shift into the middle third of the pitch here to allow that kind of transition. If we were to play across the line here, Liverpool were to play across the line here, Leeds would be able to shift everything across and provide that kind of stability still in the midfield. So I think it's massively more stable than what we've had in the past under Daniel Farke. Now, you may be saying, okay, well, one of the things that we lacked last season is a number 10 with the creative ability to break down oppositions. This season, we aren't going to be relying on a number 10 to kind of provide that creative ability. We're going to be relying on a number 8 who isn't going to get forward that much, is going to essentially be somebody who distributes the ball to somebody like Mecha, who might drop in, turn and play the ball out wide and then get back in again. And that's kind of not the end of the number 8's role. They will get higher and they will kind of support here as an option to have the ball and maybe come backwards to an Ampadu or Stack who might be on the halfway line. Oops, I've moved a line there. But the point being that the creativity is going to have to come from the wingers and the forward this season. And Daniel Farke, in a recent interview, did say that he definitely sees a need for improvement in the forward areas in terms of signings. Of course, in the Villarreal game that we watched, Leeds weren't horrendous up front and we managed to score a goal, but we did have a lack of Dan James. Ramazani came on later and did really well, but we had a bit of a lack of a Dan James in there who has that kind of ability to just speed past people. So we weren't at full strength in that sense. And of course, we also didn't have Jayden Bogle out here, who's a lot stronger than Schmidt as a fullback, especially as an attacking threat as well. So our full team is better than what we played with against Villarreal. That's obvious to see. But there are still some kind of changes needed in the forward areas. Mecha is very good at being the guy to drop into space, get the ball here and be a very strong hold-up player and turn around the corner and see what his options are beyond him. But Mecha is very injury-prone and you cannot go into a Premier League season relying on him as your first-choice striker for an entire season when you know what his injury record is like. That is to say, Joel Peru is obviously also a very capable striker, but I think Joel Peru is suited more to games where you're only going to get 1 or 2 chances and you have to take them, and he's that clinical finisher. I think that's kind of his role this season for me. So at the moment, for system-wise, it kind of leaves Mecha as the guy up front, and the profile of player, I know Lockie loves talking about the profile of player. It's not necessarily the specific player all the time. They're looking for a specific type of player. They're looking for a profile, a player that can do certain things, has a certain skill set. So shout out to Lockie. Lockie, if you haven't already, go to Lockie Leeds and subscribe because he does some great tactical stuff, more in depth than I can do. But Mecha is this hold-up guy, and somebody like Rodrigo Muniz with his ability to kind of hold that up, and Kristovic as well to a certain extent with his physicality, you can see why those two have been identified throughout the window as players that Leeds would want to go in for. So for me, this role is so important, not just as a striker to go and finish things off and score goals, but as a part of the build-up, because we are going to have to rely on the creativity of those forward areas. Somebody like Rodrigo Muniz gets the ball into feet and he drops into these areas. He's very good at kind of picking a pass over the top and finding someone in there. And do you know who else is really good at doing that as well? Bilal El-Khannouss is somebody who can drop in. He's got the ability to go past a man, but he's also got the ability to have really good progressive passes. In the full video, we talked about Bilal El-Khannouss. That's one of the things we identified as something that was really strong about his game. was his ability to pass forward and his ability to find teammates in forward areas. So that's something that would really help us out. If we can get a Bilal El-Khannouss or a Delaine Bakwa in, as well as the current crop that we have, as well as a striker as well, that's where we're really going to start to see results. Going back to what Farke likes to do in general, though, you do see that, like I said, in the game against Villarreal, we still saw that this time it was Gnonto. He would cut inside and be in this area, and we saw Gabriel Gudmundsson attempting to get forward. There was a moment where Gabriel Gudmundsson was here in the box challenging with the goalkeeper for a header, and that is exactly the kind of positions that Firpo was picking up last season, so there's no change in that aspect. What I think happens, though, is that people think, okay, so Leeds are going to sit back this season because they've bought defensive players in midfield. I don't think that's the case at all. I think buying the midfield and improving the midfield in terms of its defensive stability is what Farke thinks will allow him to play his attacking football still. So here's how I think it will go on an average game of us attacking. So let's say that your players are a little bit further back here. Let's say that Biol and Rodon have the ball here in midfield. Usually you'd see this player a little bit higher up here, almost playing as a left midfielder. So let's take it as Gabby Gudmundsson from now. So the ball comes into Stack here, and Stack plays it into Gudmundsson. Now, obviously he'll move across a little bit. You might have the winger come in, receive the ball, and Gudmundsson will make that run beyond. So once he's gone into this space here, and you think, okay, we might look a little bit kind of exposed at the back in previous situations if we had a number 10 up here as well. But I think the difference is, number one, Ampadu can drop between the two centre-backs, and we saw him do that in the Villarreal game. So you would see Ampadu drop between the two centre-backs and Stack kind of patrol this middle area here, with potentially Longstaff having the fitness and the tracking ability to get back in here as well and create a 5 in here if Leeds did cross the ball in. Goalkeeper throws it out quickly to McAllister. We always use Liverpool just because the opposition markers are always red. But yeah, they start to play out from the back. Leeds have got that defence there ready to combat that. And I think this is a big part of what Farke's trying to do. He doesn't want to take away from his attacking fullback, because our fullbacks were amazing last season and provided so much attacking threat. But what having 3 in midfield allows you to do is create situations like this. The other thing is, with our rest defence, let's say that we have the ball up here and Gudmundsson loses it again. Because Gudmundsson is the one that's gone up and it's on this side of the pitch that we've lost the ball, Stack actually, and I saw him do it a few times, it's what Gruev likes to do, and I think it's what Stack's going to do as well in certain situations. Stack will drop in as a left back. So essentially you've still got 3 at the back here, and he'll allow Ampadu and perhaps Longstaff to patrol these midfield areas instead. So our rest defence is always kind of consisting of 5 different players, 5 of the same players, the 2 holding midfielders, and 2 centre-backs, plus your number 8 that can drop in and help out. But primarily, you've got that 4 there, essentially still having a back 4, even if they're not full-backs, which allows the freedom for somebody like Gabriel Gudmundsson to go up and get high up in the pitch and play those interplay passes to try to get the ball into the front line. So you might think at the start of this video, oh, well, when we actually look at it, without a number 10, we've only got 3 players who are trying to do anything in attack, and it's a little bit like looking at some teams like a Sean Dyche team, where it's essentially let's defend well and get it into the front players and just let them do what they want to do. Whereas this is still a tactical structure, and we do still have our fullbacks high and wide trying to create things, but we've just accounted for the Premier League counter-attack ability of a team like Liverpool, who, of course, are the best team in the country by the fact that they won the division last season. So Leeds are basically saying, okay, when you do win the ball back, opposition team, you've got number 8 coming at you, and you've still got a full defensive line there ready to try to cut out anything that comes into here. And I think that's going to be massively important. It's just a slight switch, dragging that number 10 back, giving him a number 8 role instead, and essentially saying, okay, your wingers and your fullbacks plus the number 8 feeding balls into them is your attacking threat. And I think that still gives you a good amount of players. That's still half your team being in the final third trying to create things. So you've still got 4 across here and potentially even Bogle coming across as well, because we've seen at times last season, let's say Goodmanson crosses it in, we've actually seen Bogle trying to meet things at the back post here to have a shot on goal. So the ability is there to still create chances in attack. And I think that's going to be very, very important for Leeds. When we look at the kind of defensive side of things, let's reset this slightly. The defensive side of things when we don't have the ball, of course, having that 3 in there is going to be very important for a defensive side of things. So let's say Liverpool are trying to play out from the back and Mecha presses, but they do manage to beat the press. Leeds have got 3 in there to match up against any team that's playing a 4-3-3 or outnumber people who are playing a 4-2-3-1 in there as well to try to stop those passes. The other thing as well is that, of course, the wingers are going to have to help out the fullbacks. Leeds Creator Cup, I needed a bit of this. But the fullback, for example, in the Villarreal game, Schmidt, I think he started okay in the first 5-10 minutes, but then he kind of struggled a little bit. But he had Brendan Aronson to come back and help him out so that he can double up on those wide areas. So it's going to be very important that whoever plays in these winger roles actually drops in as well to try and help out in these situations. And then you end up with a little bit more stability. Of course, you still have your striker up here, but having your striker up here is why it's so important to have an out ball like a Mecha or whoever we bring in, which I think will have the profile of Mecha, somebody who can hold the ball up. Because let's say that Bogle tackles it and the ball falls to Aronson. Aronson's got a 10-yard run down the line before he's closed down, but Mecha comes across and is that out ball. Him backing into this defender, stopping him, be able to get around him, I've moved the line again, and holding this ball there is what allows the rest of the team to get up the pitch. So when the ball is turned over and when Leeds play in transition, it'll allow whoever is attacking, so Aronson, for example, in that Villarreal game, but it's more likely Dan James, El-Khannouss, for example, will get forward and offer those options to be an out ball. So then when the ball comes back to Aronson, maybe Mecha makes his run inside, Aronson runs towards he. You've got an overlap here of Bogle, the ball played down the line. You can start to see how in transition, Leeds will be a very dangerous team if they've got that hold-up player to hit. Because we do have the ability to stop moves now with this midfield. I think we're going to be very solid. I think Rodon and Bijol very physical in the air. And when we talked about the transfer business that we've done in terms of the midfielders and defenders and stuff that we've signed a lot of very tall physical players who can compete in the Premier League on a technical level as well as a physical level to try and dominate the opposition. But the way that we're building at the moment, building on what FARKES has already done and with some slight tweaks to the system, I believe will be a really, really excellent way to play in the Premier League and a very intelligent and pragmatic way to play in the Premier League without being too boring. I think we'll still be good in transition on counter-attacks. I think we'll be decent defensively and we'll have a base to build off. And I think when we get counter-attacked, we'll have a good rest defence to try to essentially counteract whatever they do on the counter-attack. So that's the kind of updated tactics then for Daniel Farke in 2025 in the Premier League. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Of course, leave a like. Make sure you go and check out the links in the description below. Thanks for watching Leeds lately, and I'll see you in the next one.